What's going on, everybody? It's Conte here with another video. Color wheels in DaVinci Resolve 15. What I'm going to do first of all, as always, to insert a video clip into my media pool, I'm going to go to File, File and Import Media. Having selected an MP4 video for my options, I'm going to left click and drag this video clip down to my timeline until the blue and green segments appear for the video and audio respectively. Using the blade edit mode, which I discussed in a previous tutorial, I'm going to left click on this and left click twice across the video clip I've just inserted to create 3 separate edits. Click on the color icon at the bottom of your interface. In the new window, I can see each of my 3 new edits in line with each other in the middle of my interface. The color wheels option is just below. Left click on this so that we can see this image better whilst I'm changing the color effects in the color wheels section. I'm going to left click on the expansion window at the top above the actual video preview. Left click once. The first section I'm going to go through in the color wheels part is the primaries wheels. Underneath each of the 4 colored wheels you can see horizontal wheels, which if you drag to the right for any of these 4 options increases the exposure. Dragging left the other way will decrease the exposure and the intensity of the brightness. To undo any mistake, press Ctrl and Z, or press Command and Z if you're a Mac user. To reset all settings within this particular window, simply left click on the section next to Primaries Wheels, the curled arrow with the plus symbol inside. Lift enables us to adjust the color intensity within the shadows and dark sections of an image. So if I drag this horizontal wheel to the right, for example, to increase the intensity, you can see that it's happening with the dark sections of this image, the forest trees and the grassy areas surrounding the mountain. Dragging it left the other way will make these particular sections darker. Note how when I increase the lift, you can also see other sections apart from just the dark section also intensify slightly. Gamma enables the adjustment of midtones, which are basically the color shades on the image that aren't shadows and aren't regarded as highlights by the program. So when I drag the horizontal wheel to the right here, you can see the midtones coming from the mountainside trees intensify slightly in particular. Like with lift, other sections of the image also intensify in terms of brightness. Left click on the curled arrow next to any of these colored circles to reset the properties for any of these settings, such as gamma here. Gain is basically the opposite of lift, as it focuses on the highlights and the brighter sections of the visual content, such as the snow and the sky in this particular video clip here. Finally, the offset segment focuses on the entire video. So if I drag the horizontal wheel to the right, the brightness intensifies across the whole image, like so, and doesn't just focus on particular tones, whether they be dark or bright. If you wanted any of these particular tones in the image to be of a particular color shade, simply drag the circle within the rainbow ring to your preferred color. So for example, if I wanted the dark sections, such as the trees in this video, to be greener, if I left click on this circle and drag it towards the green section in the bottom left here, you can see that the color is applied to those dark sections, seeing that I've adjusted this in the lift circle. Color changes made in gamma applied to the midtones, color changes in gain applied to the highlights, and color changes in offset applied to the whole image. Similar to how the exposure was affected when we were going through the horizontal wheels. Colors can be adjusted manually. Also, if you left click on the center box here called Primaries Bars, which takes you to an area where you can determine the color shade for each of those 4 sections we've gone through. As you can see here, the numbers remain the same. The dark sections of my image remain green, and you can change these by also changing the RGB red, green, blue columns underneath the relevant title. You can drag them both ways. Notice how if I drag green the opposite direction, we get a magenta look. And the final section here, having just done primaries bars, we'll move on to the third section, which is log. Notice how if I try to reset anything in my color wheels section, such as the green for the dark sections. Now that I'm in log, this won't work. So if I want to reset any changes I've made, I need to return to the relevant window, in this case here the primary wheels, and left click on the reset button there, like so. Returning to log again, we have another set of 4 rainbow rings, and each with a title which reflects what we just saw in the previous 2 sections, such as lift, which addresses the dark sections, which is also what shadow does. Midtone is basically covered by gamma, as we saw in the previous window for primaries wheels, and highlights was covered by gain. Offset is also within this section. So what's the actual difference between the log window and the primaries wheels settings? If I adjust the shadow section of this particular video clip here by dragging the horizontal wheel to the right, as I demonstrated in the primaries wheels example, if we increase the exposure of one particular tone, we noticed how other parts of the image were also affected. For example, if we changed the dark trees, you could also see the lighter sections such as the snow and the sky also changing. Here though, with the log settings, all we're doing when we adjust the shadow properties is change the exposure within the dark sections themselves. Although this enables us as a video editor to be more specific with what we're targeting and adjusting on a clip, this may affect how certain content on a video clip with a particular tone may blend in with other sections, as one particular part of your image may appear significantly edited and out of place in comparison with the rest of the content on your video. The benefit, obviously, as mentioned, is that you can target specific tones here without being too concerned about other particular areas being adjusted. In this case here, as I've just demonstrated, we're editing the shadows and we avoid editing the more brighter areas such as the snow and the mountains and the sky. Primaries wheels. Down in the bottom section here, below the rainbow circles, you can see a section of tools here as well. The color picker shape, which you may recognize from Photoshop for example, enables us to determine what the red, green and blue code is of a particular shade on your video. What if you wanted to get the white balance sorted in a picture to make the image look more natural and unedited? If you left click on the box next to this white balance icon, which is called auto balance, you should find that the color wheels are automatically adjusted. The auto balance enables a basic white balance and natural look application to the image without emphasis on a particular shade that may be added during editing. Notice how in primaries wheels, number 1 is selected in the bottom left corner. To the right of this number, you can see contrast, pivot, sat, short for saturation, hue and lum mix. Contrast is the difference between lighting and colour within an image. High contrast results in the image being made up of sharp and significant sections of light and darkness, and the midpoints eventually disappear. So if I increase this one, for example, you can see that the dark and the light sections intensify, whereas the midtones from the trees, for example, beside the mountain, have disappeared. And obviously this disrupts the blending of visual content on your video, so it is recommended that this is not too high. The pivot tool is used to adjust the amount of shadows or highlights identified by the software on your video clip. The higher the pivot, the higher the amount of shades on screen that are considered shadows by the software. So if I increase contrast, like so, you can see that the image is really dark now when I increment the pivot number to the maximum 1.000. And the lower the pivot, the higher the amount of shades that are considered highlights. Like so, much brighter now. The only sections which remain significantly dark are the nearby trees. Hue and saturation, as well as an image's brightness, generate the image's colour. Saturation refers to the colour vibrancy in an image. The higher the saturation, the brighter the colour shades in an image will be, and the lower the saturation, the greater the underexposure. So if I increase the contrast more and decrease the saturation, you can see that the image colours are fading away and going to black and white eventually when the saturation is 0. If we go the other way, towards the 100 mark, you can see that each colour is more vibrant. Hue is the specific color that we are presented with, which is made up of the 3 parameters red, green and blue. The reason why this is set to 50 is so that there is a balance with these 3 particular shades. If you decrease or increase this one, then there will be less color variation on your video image. The hue is like one big cyclical rainbow. If you start off at the bottom, we are presented with an image colored mainly with red and pink. If I increase this, then we go into the purple and blue shades, followed by green again, and eventually back to red. And the number is therefore set to 50 to get the balance right. When manipulating colours in an image, DaVinci will moderate colour channels such as red and blue, even when you're altering just one other, such as the green. The lower the lum mix, the less alteration will be made to other channels that you as the image or video editor are not manipulating. The shape of the mountain is more significant with a lum mix at 100, as the illuminance is maintained as a result of multiple color channels being modified, and that's why an editor would normally have lum mix set at 100. If I go to the gain ring and drag the circle in the middle, you can see that the top of the mountain is still significant in this image. If I reduce the lum mix, the mountain segment now doesn't stand out so well from the sky as a result of a lack of channel adjustment by the software. If the lum mix is increased back to 100, as is recommended, then the quality of the image can be maintained, and particular sections such as the mountaintop here can stand out better. We'll move on to the third section, which is log. The lower the LR section, the less sensitive the program will be when trying to intensify the shadows of a particular video clip. And the higher the HR section, the lower the sensitivity will be of the highlighted sections within your image, such as the snow in the mountains here. So for example, if I increase this to 1.000, which is the maximum value, and try increase the exposure of the highlight section, you can see that this is having a less intensifying effect on the actual highlights within the image. If I reduce the HR, then the exposure is more significant. If I decrease the LR and increase the exposure for the shadows, likewise you can see that there is less exposure of the dark and shadowy areas of the clip. If I increase the LR, then these dark sections can intensify more. If I click on number 2, temp is basically short for temperature. The higher the temp, particularly with red colours applied, such as I've done with the highlights here under gain, the redder the image will appear, and the lower the temp, the more blue it will be. Tint also works similarly to temp. The lower the tint, the greener the image will appear, and the higher the tint, the stronger the magenta shade will appear across your image. MD basically refers to mid-tone detail. If I were to reduce this, this will create a blur as the object sharpness in the image is reduced, and each object within the image is not as significant. Increasing the MD will make the image content much sharper. CB refers to the color balance, and it pays particular attention to the more bland colors of the image, such as the white and grey sections. It enhances the primary color properties within these. So the white mountains, for example, up here, as just referring to the more bland colors such as white and grey, once we increase the color balance for this video clip, you can see that the white sections are now filled with a more yellowy colour, and the grey sections have gone slightly more blue. Shad is short for shadow. The lower the number, the more obscured, the more darker areas of the image will be. And HL for highlights, the greater the number for this one here, the more intense the brighter sections of the video image will be. If I drag this the other way into minus figures, it almost puts the highlighted sections on par with the shadowy sections by reducing the brightness significantly. These are settings which you can apply to each edit within a video file project on DaVinci. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that video was useful to you. To support this channel, please like and subscribe. Join me soon for another video. Take care.